Hi guys, welcome to this channel. This is a video which is a part of a sequence in which we are learning HTML and CSS, and this video is specifically for CSS topic which is pseudo elements. So let's get started about this topic. Actually, what is a use of pseudo element? In CSS, a pseudo element is used to style a specific part of an element. For example, we can style a paragraph's first line if we want it in a different style, or we can style its first letter if we want it in a different style, or if we want to insert some sort of content in the starting or end of an element, we use these pseudo elements. In that case, let's see their examples and practical aspects so that you may get better understanding about the topic. First of all, the syntax of writing pseudo element styles. The pseudo element style is just the same way as we learned about the pseudo classes, but the only difference is that in pseudo elements the double colon is used between selector and the pseudo element. If you haven't watched our pseudo class element, then you can shift to our previous video in this series, and in that you would get the in-depth knowledge about how to use pseudo classes. So this is general syntax. First of all, we write the selector that we want to style, whose specific part we want to style, and then we write the double colon sign here, and after that follows the pseudo element's name. So let us see its examples. First of all, we have the first line pseudo element. This first line pseudo element styles the first line of an element in a different way. The style written inside this selector would be applied to the first line of that element. So as you can see in this file, we have this file for today's practical, and we also have these files which are files from previous lessons, and if you want these files you can get them in the descriptions of each lesson. So let us create a style tag inside this file, and for example I am going to create a p tag right here having some text inside it, which would have some text inside it, and inside this style tag I am going to style this p tag's first line, and in this first line I am going to give it the color of red so that you may get the understanding. This is not the only style that you could give inside it. You can style it according to your preferences. I am just going with this style because I am here just showing you the example of these properties. So right here inside our browser, if you see, the first line has got a different style as we specified in our style file. So after this first line comes the first letter pseudo element. As by its name you can guess it that this pseudo element styles the first letter of the element. So let's get into our IDE, and inside our IDE, if I style the first child of this tag, and not first child, actually first child is our pseudo class, whereas first letter is pseudo element. With pseudo class we use single colon, whereas in pseudo elements we use double colons. So for first letter I am going to give it the font size of 30 pixels. Now as you can see, the first letter has got a different style as we specified inside this selector. So after this first letter there comes the example that we can use these pseudo classes along with the class of the element we are selecting. So right here inside, if inside this body, if I create a new p tag and I give it a class, so if I style this p tag using its class and give it that pseudo class, any of the pseudo element actually, so then it would get that style as well. So right here, this is the first line, and this background color is coming to this p tag view to its class, whereas this one is not having orange background because this doesn't has that class. So this was the example of pseudo element and HTML class using together. Whereas the next pseudo element we have is the before pseudo element. This pseudo element is used to put the content before the actual content of the element. This before tag can be used in various fancy ways that we are going to see in our upcoming practical video, which contains a practical example about creating a website. But for now, in this I am going to just give you a general idea that how do we use it. And if you want to see that video, that would be up on our channel in some days, so you must subscribe this channel if you want to see that video. And in that video we are going to create complete front end of a blog website, and we will be using all these advanced sort of topics inside that, and all these advanced concepts would be used inside that. So don't miss that and just subscribe our channel. And inside here, if I style this p.test tag and give it the before pseudo element and write here the content, actually this content property inside this before pseudo element and the upcoming pseudo element, which is after pseudo element, they are really important. So if we won't give it, then they would not work in most cases. So in content, if I write this is before, sorry, I have did a mistake here. I don't have to write text here, we have to write test here. So right here, if you see, then the style of this or the content of this p tag has changed. This text that we wrote inside the content property of that pseudo element, which is right here, it has just become the starting part or has been rendered to the content of the element, and it is just inserted into the element before its original content. So right after before element we have the after pseudo element. This does the same way, it inserts the content inside that styled element, whereas it enters or inserts the text or the content of this pseudo element after the content of that element. For example, if I write here p test after element and this content after element, so in this example you would see that the content of that element is just inserted at the end of this element's content, means after this element's content. So there is also a pseudo element which is marker, and this pseudo element is used to style the marker of the elements, whereas such as list. So right here, if I create a new list which is unordered list, and inside it if I create items, different items to show you the example, and right here if I inside this ul I style its marker and give it the color of orange. Note for this ul tag, we just have to write this marker. If we just write this pseudo element this way, we don't need to give any selector before it, so it would work for all the markers. And right inside here you can see this marker has got that style that we just specified there. And after this marker pseudo element, there comes the selection pseudo element. I personally use it many times because it could be very useful if you are creating professional front end. The way it is used is that it renders this style and uses this style for the selection that we do inside our HTML or inside our document. Let us see its practical example. In that way you would get better understanding. So right inside this, if I give this style to selection and give it the color of magenta, so inside here, inside our documents, you can see whenever I would select any element, it would be having this style. So for taking it to another level, I can give it a background color of black. So right, you can see this has got its selection completely changed. Whereas in simple scenarios, the typical selection is of blue background with a white text color inside it. So we have overridden that default style. So this was it for this video. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, then please press the thumbs up button. And in upcoming videos we would be having the practical implementation of all these concepts that we have till now understood and learned in HTML and CSS for front-end development. That would be a complete blog website developed by us. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you. Goodbye.